Gopijana Balabha Girivardhari Jasodanandana Brajajanarandana Jasodanandana Brajajanarandana Jamunatiravanam Chadi Jamunatiravanachadi Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hadi Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hadi Kunjabi Hadi Gopijana Balabha Girivardhari Gopijana Balabha Girivardhari Jasodanandana Brajajanarandana Jasodanandana Brajajanarandana Jamunatiravanachadi Jamunatiravanachadi Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hadi Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hadi Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hadi Madhava Kunjabi Hadi Jayom Vishnu Pad Paramahansa Parividagacharya Astatarasatasi Semad His Divine Grace Sri Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Ananta Koti Vaishnavadinda Ki Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Gora Premanandi Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Continuing, Canto 10, Chapter 14, and we're somewhere in the middle of Text 10. And Text 10 is an appeal by Brahma for forgiveness. Yesterday morning there was some discussion. Was he asking for forgiveness, or was he asking for give me whatever you want? You know, if you want to punish me, punish me. If you want to accuse me, whatever you want. We had some discussion about that. And here specifically, at least, whatever was said in the previous verses, it's now definitive in this verse. He wants to be pardoned. Therefore, O infallible Lord, kindly excuse my offense. I've taken birth in the mode of passion, and therefore am simply foolish, presuming myself a controller independent of your lordship. My eyes are blinded by the darkness of ignorance, which caused me to think of myself as the unborn creator of the universe. But please consider that I'm your servant and therefore worthy of your compassion. And Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur comments, quote, paraphrasing Brahma's message, though my bad conduct is worthy of punishment, and my foolishness is worthy of forgiveness, because you are all merciful, you should pardon me completely. He's the appealing. He's not the judge. The Lord is the judge. But he's appealing for full pardon. You do not waver from your qualities, such as mercifulness. Whereas I am fallen, therefore I address you as Achyuta. Unquote. Or, one should give more mercy to the most fallen. With this in mind, you should pardon my offense. Brahma then identifies his low qualities. I am ignorant, like a clay doll. Rajo bhuvaha. I think that I am separate from you. He explains his identity as a controller. I think I am your son, arising from your navel, with great pride. Andha tamaha. But I'm blind in all 8 eyes. When the moon of your mercy shines upon me, my pride will be destroyed. Question, how will forgiveness be manifest? His appeal says, this Brahma, Esha, is worthy of my mercy because, although he shows himself as master elsewhere towards me, he is a servant. Natavan. That's Krishna's view. He's worthy of my mercy because he's, in front of me at least, presenting himself as my servant. Or the meaning can be Krishna's thinking, out of foolishness, he made a show of independence in front of me. But in truth, Brahma is dependent, Natavan, because of dependence on my energy. Therefore, I should show him mercy. Oh, so mercy or no mercy, that's the question. It's going to be all mercy this way, that way. That's because it's coming from Krishna, the merciful. Jiva Goswami writes, Sridhar Swami explains as follows. Though I think I am the master, Prabhutvena, you think, quote, since I am the master, this is my servant. I should be merciful to him. Therefore, you should forgive me. Another explanation is, quote, since I am insignificant and you are so great, you should forgive me. He explains his insignificance. Quote, I am born of Rajoguna and ignorance. I have a portion of tamas also. Just see. Although I can see, my eyes were born from pride. andha, tamas, and darkness. The word hi, he, indicates this is well known. You know this, but you are called achyuta. You should be true to your word. What's that? He's going to quote now this verse from Ramayana Yudhya Kanda that we mentioned yesterday evening. You know, Ram saying, I will give fearlessness to that person who surrenders to me once. Here's the Sanskrit from Valmiki Ramayana. Sakrid eva prapano yas tavasmita cha yachate abhayam sarvada tasmai dadami etad vratam mamaha. Vratam mamaha, my vow, Ram's vow. I have made a vow that I will give fearlessness, abhayam, to that person who surrenders and once says, I am yours. So you're achyuta, be true to your word, which is, here's the word. So please give me fearlessness. And I should not be considered an unsuitable candidate. You should think, quote, this Brahma deserves my mercy. Why? He's my servant. Na tavan. Why would Brahma be a servant? He is a servant to me, Mayi. He has dedicated himself to me alone. And finally, Sanatan Goswami. This is our final commentary for this morning. Because you are so great and I am so small, you should forgive me. He shows his insignificance. I was born in passion, ignorant, etc. He means certainly. Hi means certainly. And it is to be used with each term. I mean, certainly, 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 certainly. You never fail at any time, in any way, from your glories, achyuta. You forgive all offenses in a person who surrenders to you. Quote, he is worthy of my mercy. He is a servant, not tavan. Why should Brahma be a servant? Quote, he is a servant to me, Mayi, Bhagavan. By being a servant, I attain you. By being a servant, I attain you. Paragraph. An alternative to Sridhar Swami's explanation is, my eyes are blinded by dense darkness, by being spread with Maya. So what's the important takeaway from here in this section, not only this verse, but this section? Mistakes are inevitable, even for an exalted person such as Brahma, what to speak of ourselves, and mistakes have their consequences. There was some question, what if we're a devotee, you make a mistake, is that karma? It's not karma, but we're responsible for mistakes. And what should you do when you know you're gonna get it for your mistakes? Knowing or unknowing mistakes. In this case, it's knowing, but sometimes it may not be. And here comes the responsibility in the form of whatever it is that Krishna decides. The main message from text 8, we're at text 10, is don't budge an inch from the lotus feet of the Supreme Lord and being in service to Him through body, mind, and words. There is no harm, or at least, Brahma is showing the example of explaining why there's eligibility for forgiveness from the Supreme Lord. Not like we have to go whining and begging. It's His nature, but Brahma is giving teachings that help us understand what we should do, how we should be thinking, and this thinking as the Lord is by nature merciful. And because of being influenced by the modes of nature, we mess up sometimes. We don't do what we should do in different ways, knowingly or unknowingly. We don't do what we should do, we do things we shouldn't do, knowingly or unknowingly. Now, it's not okay, just continue doing those wrong things. This is called an offense against the chanting of the holy name, to continue doing those wrong things, knowing the Lord's merciful and I'll just keep doing the wrong things. And He'll be merciful because I'm His devotee. And a devotee doesn't think like that. That's not a devotee, that's something else. That's deception. We learned about deception from Putana's story. That's the deceptive guru, but there's also the deceptive disciple. And as a disciple, being deceptive doesn't mean I have to be perfect, because disciple is generally not perfect. There may be perfect disciples, but generally not perfect. So we're less than perfect disciples, and we look to Krishna, the one we're devoted to seek correction from our wrongs, so that we're non-deceptive. Prabhupada uses this word, non-deceptive penance. That's specifically in Canto 2, Chapter 9, what Vishnu says to Brahma, you pleased me by your non-deceptive penance. Right? Non-deceptive penance, what's that? He just simply wants the Supreme Lord, and it's not making it look like he wants the Supreme Lord. Really, he wants something from the Supreme Lord. He wants the Supreme Lord. So when we're not pure, we want stuff. Besides, we're mixed. We want the Supreme Lord plus stuff. And even if we want the Supreme Lord plus stuff, non-deceptive penance, something like Dhruva, he wanted the Supreme Lord plus. And it wasn't deceptive, he was really explicit about what he wanted. With his mother, with Narada, with Vishnu, what he wanted. That non-deceptive penance brought him to the position where the plus, the wanting something else, was gone. And when he got the mercy of the Supreme Lord in the form of the Lord's darshan, he was embarrassed that he had wanted the stuff, the kingdom and retaliation and everything. He was very repentant that was in his mind as motivation. So we can get on the other side of what's the mix in bhakti by ultimately striving for pure devotional service. At least that's not exactly where Dhruva started, but that's the teaching that Rupa Goswami has given us. Knowing we're not there, but aspiring for pure devotional service. Anyabhilasha shunyam jnana karma dhyanavrtam anukulyena krishna anushilanam. It's really a good verse that Rupa Goswami's verse from Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. That's it in a nutshell, the bhakti process. So back to the lesson from this little section of Brahma's prayers. We're in the material world. In this life and in previous lives, we've made mistakes. We've misused our free will. It may be in form of wrongdoing, of sin. It may be in the form of wrongdoing, of offense to Krishna or Krishna's representatives or Krishna's abode or Krishna's paraphernalia or something. We want the connection with Krishna to be unobstructed. There's obstacles, and anarthas that arise from offense is a big obstacle. And how are we going to get rid of that big obstacle? We do our sadhana or bhajana kriya properly, and this is a nice lesson. We appeal to the Supreme Lord. Help this anartha, this reaction to my offense, please remove it. And left after that removal is not, now I have a clean slate, I can go do offensive things, but attaining Krishna. It circles back to the starting point. The very first verse of his prayers is he wants to attain Krishna. So this is teaching for us how we can attain Krishna, not only how we can deal with misfortune when it comes, but rather how we can stay fixed in achieving Krishna's association, obstacles for those wrongdoings. The anarthas of the heart need to be removed, not just, the circumstances causing us some grief needs to go away. That's not part of the life of a devotee. We may wish for someone else. There are a lot of people I know currently in a health condition of one kind or another. A number of them are in the COVID condition, and some other conditions. There's no harm as a Vaishnava wishing well for that individual, that Krishna help them get on the other side of that circumstance. But the deeper position is not just the circumstance gets removed, but in the deeper and subtle sense, the anartha that's in the heart that's obstructing the fullness of Krishna's mercy for us or for that person, that's the ideal. When Chaitanya Mahaprabhu heard this from one of his devotees, who was the Chaitanya Charitamrita quiz question? Who was the devotee that prayed to Lord Chaitanya, please deliver all the conditioned souls in this universe, and if you think that their sins are too much, then just transfer those sinful reactions to me and please deliver them. Vasudev Datta. So that's a nice prayer. Lord Chaitanya was really happy with him. Not necessary for Lord Chaitanya to transfer sinful reactions to Vasudev Datta or anyone else. But the compassion of a Vaishnava is outstanding. So towards others, and this nice idea of self-compassion towards oneself, the obstacles that are obstructing me in my relationship with Krishna, please remove them. That's what we want. And we require Krishna's potency, his mercy to remove those things. We do things to follow sadhana properly, and we depend on mercy and calling for Krishna's mercy to remove those obstacles. That's good. So let's see if there's some discussion.
Hare Krishna, Guru Maharaj. This section seems to be very nice and inspiring at the same time. As I'm trying to reflect and observe, there seem to be deeper and deeper layers of application, Guru Maharaj.
Mm-hmm.
One thing I was thinking when we are talking about this acceptance, I think it's kind of similar to Shatrupa Mataji's question yesterday. When we know this may be my own, like intentional mistakes or intentionally committed things, it becomes a little easier. Okay, I accept that reaction. But when we don't know, I'm finding this tendency in the name of acceptance, the heart is becoming kind of apathetic. Okay, whatever it will come, it has to come. That mood of approaching Krishna and asking forgiveness or asking for protection, I feel that's kind of blocked or something. I don't know. It may be similar to Shidhari Prabhu's question the other day about numbing and like, okay, whatever.
Well, it's not that, if I've understood your question or your comment correctly, it's not that this channel is a 10 and that channel is a 1. Rather, they're both good. The goodness of either of them is the connection with Krishna. The acceptance, whatever's coming my way, I accept. That's Mars Priksit, for example. Whatever's coming my way, that's it. And the other is this prayer. Please forgive me for my offense. That gets a 10 too. The essence is not, option A or option B. The essence is the connection with Krishna, purpose.
In that context, Guru Maharaj, you mentioned in the Sunday feast class regarding this non-deceptive penance that it's not really for us. It's not just to be free from that reaction or like, just to be escaping from that, but it's really go further towards Krishna for that connection.
Same point. Anything else in the room? Okay, let's go online.
This question is from Megha Mataji. This is a general understanding question. We hear that one cannot take to the process of devotional service unless all the sinful reactions are removed.
Really? I know the verse from Bhagavad Gita, Tesham Tontikatam Jananam Punyakarmanam. So
I don't know if she's referring to that, but so the question is, so how can one commit sin and still do devotional service?
if I mean, if the world cannot, those persons who are living in this world during this age of Kali cannot take part in devotional service until they become completely cleansed of sins, you can just throw in the towel because nobody's eligible. So I think rather than drilling down on that one, let's go to the other question. If one is engaged in devotional service, how is it possible to engage? How is it possible to engage in or do something that's sinful by deviating from devotional service? It's not in the category of devotional service. You deviate. You can. So submission to Krishna can be intermittent.
Good Maharaj, we also hear that devotional service in modes like
Devotional service in the modes.
so until
That's
we
not sinful, though. It's just in the modes. Her question is specifically to sinful.
She confirmed she was referring to that verse that you had.
Okay.
This question is from Prematarangini Mataji. Guru Maharaj, we heard today, this Brahma is worthy of my mercy because though he shows himself as the master everywhere, towards me he is a servant, Nathavan. When I read this sentence, it sounds like duplicity or deception. We see something like this all the time in how disciples behave in front of their spiritual master as a servant, but very much as a master in other relationships. What is the balance between showing mercy or forgiveness and addressing the deception in such cases?
Well, fortunately, Krishna is all-powerful and all-pure. And fortunately, Krishna is very merciful. So specific to that comment made about Brahma, Krishna recognizes in a deeper place, Brahma is dependent, and Brahma recognizes his dependence, yet he's tinged by passion. And so, but before me, his passion has been reduced or eradicated. In his heart of hearts, he's submissive to me, Nathavan. So he's worthy of my mercy. Now, how might Krishna give that mercy? Now going over to, that's up to him. And sometimes it's this, and sometimes it's that, and sometimes it's neglect, and sometimes it's embrace, and sometimes it's whatever it is. Sometimes it's punishing, sometimes, punishing is also mercy. Like I'm thinking, the punishment example, when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu severely chastised the assistant of Advaita Acharya for trying to negotiate a debt that Advaita Acharya had with the king. He severely chastised. How can Advaita Acharya, Mahavishnu, have a debt with anybody? So he severely chastised that devotee. And Advaita Acharya said, oh, you're showing your mercy to him. You never chastise me. He's more dear to you than I am because you chastise him, which is your mercy. So Krishna can show his mercy however. Now back to the question, yes, it's true that before the spiritual master or before someone who one sees as authority, one is, has nice behavior, and not in the presence of the spiritual master or those who are seen as authority, there's bad behavior. There's duplicity. So how is that okay? Well, the person like that, it's similar to the anonymous question last night. Some of you remember the anonymous question last night. It's the spirit of it is quite similar. That person, the duplicitous follower or disciple or individual, that before certain people they're nice and before others they're not nice, because really they're not nice. They're just being duplicitous before those who are, they want to look good or, win their favor or something, deceive them. That person, depending upon the relationship, needs some correction. And the correction can come from different sources. Ultimately, the correction comes from Krishna, because that person that's being deceptive has a relationship with Krishna. Something that I learned, Prema Trangini, you probably heard this before. Something that I learned in the first 3 weeks of living in a temple is this. The bhakti process is pure. And if someone holds on to some impurity, because the bhakti process is pure, and that person is holding on to some impurity, Krishna will remove them. Because the bhakti process is pure. They'll become purified one way or another way. That is the relationship between them and Krishna, or that relationship between them and the bhakti process. It doesn't mean, to say that doesn't mean those who have some authority relationship, type of relationship with that individual, whether it's administrative or otherwise, should say nothing. But how it's being said and how it's being done, and ultimately those authority persons, spiritual or managerial authority persons, they should see themselves as representatives of Krishna, not like controllers. And if they're representatives of Krishna, then they have to make some discrimination. What should be said, at what time, in what way, and ultimately that I'm simply an instrument of Krishna here. But ultimately it's Krishna and that person that's the deceiver. And it goes on. It goes on. No denying it goes on. Because we're less than perfect persons. In some persons it's more prominent and pronounced. Some persons it's more hidden and sneaky. That's another deception, another layer of deception. But the bhakti process is pure and purifying, and that person will be purified by one means or another by Krishna or the representatives of Krishna, perhaps. Different circumstances or messages, or Krishna's purification is infallible. Badrinarayan Swami is fond of saying something like this: justice, forget how it goes, like a grinding stone, justice, the wheel of justice turns slowly, but it like the grinding stone, it turns everything to powder, or something like that. The wheel of justice, there's justice in the universe. That deceiving person can't deceive Krishna, and Krishna and then the representatives of Krishna, his devotees, will be used to help that person become refined. The wheel of justice will help refine them, or they'll select themselves out, or bhakti will select them out. It's just how bhakti works. Bhakti is purifying. Now, some people linger a long time, so justice may take some time. But the Lord's justice is not like modern justice. Modern justice can be fallible, and Krishna's justice is infallible. It doesn't make it nice. We go, like these other comments about, well, it kind of breeds complacency. Well, it'll get taken care of in time, so Haribol. Complacency is not the way to serve Krishna, but the way to serve Krishna may be remain patient and wait for the right time, the right circumstance to be Krishna's instrument, to address that deceptive tendency. And then, Krishna is going to use different instruments of his, that means his devotees, in different ways, depending upon their nature and circumstance and their capacity and their resiliency and their faith. Thinking of Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he was Bhakti Siddhanta. They had different approaches, but Bhaktivinoda Thakur would fearlessly confront wrongdoers. Risking his life because of principle. But, it's not that you make your life dealing with wrongdoers. You won't do anything else but dealing with wrongdoers. So you have to make some decisions about what you're going to do. Even Bhaktivinoda, what to speak of any one of us. It's not an easy situation to deal with. Faith, however, says ultimately Krishna is in control and the bhakti process is pure, and those who are in the spiritual and administrative leadership positions have a great responsibility to ensure they're acting as instruments of Krishna properly.
Mataji's second question is Jiva Goswami says, "He is a servant to me, Mai. He had dedicated himself to me alone. How to understand Krishna's mood considering Rupa Goswami's definition of bhakti, and what our understanding of Krishna in that verse? Krishna means Krishna, his incarnations, his parts and parcels, etc. And how to see this in relationship with Kapila's teachings. Those who worship Krishna but do not see the Krishna connection in his parts and parcels are only imitating."
I'm not really clear. Let's do this. I'd like to take a look at the question and try to understand the question carefully before I speak in response to the question. So maybe we can take that question up this evening, because it seems like it's an important question, and it's subtle, and I'm not clear on precisely what the question is. So let's do it this evening. And you can see that I get the question to take a look at it. Okay?
So this is from Vilasaman. Sorry. No, that's not a question. This is from Uttama Bhakta Prabhu, part 2 from yesterday. Since Lord Brahma did not mean to hurt or harm Lord Krishna, but was based on curiosity, is it still an offense or a blunder? Indra meant to harm and kill residents of Vrindavan, it's definitely an offense.
Yeah. Indra's is certainly more severe. But what Brahma did is an offense. He kidnapped the cowherd boys and calves. He interrupted Krishna's pastime of enjoying with the cowherd boys. It was an offense. It wasn't as severe, but it was an offense. Anything over here? No? Okay. How about you?
Just one.
Yeah. Adjust everything. Those masks that make it a little difficult.
Hare Krishna Guru Maharaj. In Bhagavad Gita, when Arjuna tells Krishna that it's very difficult, I can control the wind, but not my mind.
Well, he didn't say he can control the wind, but
Something
the controlling the mind is more
difficult than controlling the wind. Okay. And then Krishna says that with practice and detachment.
Yeah.
So the practice part I understand, but what does it mean by detachment?
Easy. Really simple. You ready? Attachment to Krishna is detachment. Because without attachment to Krishna, there isn't detachment. Attachment to Krishna means detachment. Supposing you don't have attachment to Krishna, supposing you're a Gyani or a Tapasvi or a something, it's not detachment. It's temporary, bungee cord, and then let go and back to attachment. It's not a detachment. Detachment means attachment to Krishna. Practice and attachment to Krishna.
Because I was thinking maybe detachment from the results that may come.
But it's same for results. You're not going to get detached from results unless you're attached to the results go to Krishna. It's really simple. I mean, conceptually it's simple.
Guru Maharaj, Mataji's question about this deception, I'm thinking about this.
I thought you would be.
I can see so much of that. One particular thing that was coming to me is my speech or interaction with the kids, at least in the beginning days. It used to be quite contrasting if some devotees are there or like not there at home, just with the kids when they do something. So one thing I used to tell myself, would I yell at them or would I say the same things if my spiritual master or mentor are here? So I used to constantly tell myself that. And then gradually with that practice, I could see it's just so natural now. I don't go to that space of yelling at them or saying things. So I'm just trying to understand your comment. So is it we have to inspect that mode? Yes, there is that deceptive tendency.
There is which?
The deceptive tendency,
Okay.
like different behaviors in front of authority.
Different behaviors is you would be a zombie if you didn't have different behaviors. So don't be a zombie. The non-deceptive has to do with, the cosmetics. Deceptive, non-deceptive. Non-deceptive is very purpose-driven. Krishna is to be pleased, or the representatives of Krishna are to be pleased. And that's it. And deceptive is cosmetic. Whatever that cosmetic, one's favorite cosmetic might be. Okay? Either of you in the back there? No? Okay.
There's a third question from Prema Tarangini Mataji. In this verse, parts of what Brahma is saying almost sounds like what one might say in a court. Not guilty due to insanity. What is the balance between taking responsibility and pleading for forgiveness based on one's own capacity or being conditioned in some way by the lower modes? We hear a similar prayer by Kalia as he talks about his conditioned nature. I'm thinking it's more to do with the inner consciousness rather than playing a victim, but would like to hear a little further from you.
Yeah, I agree. But a little further is a similar point as something that's been discussed multiple times here. You know, the game of right and wrong is easy to play. This is right and that's wrong. But however, more important than this is right and that's wrong is the consciousness behind the effort or the endeavor. It can be read that Brahma is saying, you know, I'm not guilty because of insanity. I'm not guilty because I have this mode, that mode. Rather, that's an explanation of his lowliness. It's not an excuse for bad action. It's just an explanation of why that bad action is there. His appeal for forgiveness is, I'm your devotee. He is an exalted devotee, most qualified devotee in so many ways. It's such an important post we hear in Scripture that if there isn't a qualified living entity to take the post, the personality of God who takes the post. He has to be a really qualified living entity, and he's empowered. And being empowered, there's a risk, isn't there? You get some Shakti, and you think, wow, here I am. That tendency, it's an anartha tendency described by Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur in Madhurya Kandamani, being the enjoyer of some empowerment that comes from Krishna, being the enjoyer of bhakti or the fruits of bhakti, rather than Krishna as the enjoyer. It's subtle, but such a tendency is not surprising. I don't read it that he's saying I innocent due to insanity. He's guilty, and here's why he did what he did. The lower modes of nature have influenced him, which isn't always how Brahma behaves, but in that circumstance, he behaved that way. And he's pointing to his dedication to the position of being the Lord's servant. In her phrase of her question, I caught that first part more. I was still thinking about the first part rather than the rest of it. Can you read the rest of it again?
Not the first part.
No, I got the first part, pleading insanity.
What is the balance between taking responsibility and pleading for forgiveness based on one's own incapacity or being conditioned in some way by the lower modes?
Let's just, there's devotees in the devotee community, or those who are close to, family and friends and associates, and then there's Krishna. So this is specific to one's relationship with Krishna. maybe the question is beyond, the outer circles, beyond the relationship with Krishna. It seems to me, in this case, he is taking responsibility. Because, earlier the message was, I'm fit to be punished, and I'm fit to be forgiven, and you can do with me what you like. So he was acknowledging, I'm fit to be punished. And that's the text number 8. I'm accepting whatever are the reactions due to my misdeeds in the past, in this particular case, offending Krishna. I take responsibility. And pleading for forgiveness doesn't necessarily include, I don't want the punishment part. We discussed this yesterday. It can be, I accept full responsibility. I'm pleading for forgiveness, that is, the obstacle of anartha that has arisen from my offense. You can still do with me whatever you wish, but how the sequence of events going forward in time play themselves out, I'm ready, whatever you wish. But the obstacle that's subtle, that's in my heart, that's arisen because of the offense, please clear that obstacle. So maybe that addresses the question that, to achieve pure devotion, we need obstacles out of the way. It doesn't mean to be a pure devotee, everything has to be nice. Roses and fragrant and colorful and no thorns. Obstacles removed. The obstacles of our own impurity removed. And that's a very consistent prayer for pure devotees. One of my favorite ones is Prahlad praying to Lord Nrsimhadev, please remove from my heart with your sharp nails and teeth and all the impure things from my heart. You can do with me what you like, but please remove those impure things from my heart. I hope that addresses the question. Maybe not. We can go on.
One more question. This is from Snehavalli Mataji. I heard previously that Brahma's offense is more severe than Indra.
Really?
Because Indra brought all the residents of Vrindavan together with Krishna for 7 days, but Brahma separated the residents from Krishna. I would appreciate if you could comment on this.
That's an interesting perspective. That's my comment. Different perspectives doesn't mean this one's right, and if this one's right, then that one's wrong. There can be different perspectives that are both right. My comment is that's a consolation prize. That is, he brought all the residents of Vrindavan together. That wasn't his intention. His intention was murder. Cows, Brajbasis, and Krishna. Brahma wasn't planning murder. Brahma was curious. He was covered by Maya, so he did what he did. He wasn't for 7 days trying to destroy Vrindavan and the cows. So, consolation prize. He brought them all together. Indirectly Krishna's arrangement, but his mentality and his behavior, both are very reprehensible.
Prematarangini Mataji confirmed yes, Guru Maharaj, for addressing the question, and Mataji is asking for a small clarification. My focus was not so much on Brahma, but rather our practical application.
Okay. I think I addressed that. Over here. What? There's one over here. And we're going to end with this. Even if there's something that comes online.
Thank you very much, Guru Maharaj. The last when you clarified about the intention of Indra, that really helped me, because I also heard that before. My question is about deceptive tendency.
Deceptive tendency.
Yeah. I'm trying to understand what exactly that means. You mentioned that going to Krishna for forgiveness is also mean that you not like you're trying to reform yourself. You don't do that again.
Yes, that's not deceptive.
But then I also, reflect back in my life, and I, trying to walk on a path of bhakti. I have been to Krishna for the same thing over and over again. Asking for forgiveness, like attachments, falling back into that attachment again. And is that a deceptive tendency?
No, it's just weakness. So keep going and asking and pray to the Supreme Lord, pray to Balaram for the spiritual strength to overcome the repetitiveness. Because without that, it's not going to happen. So the unsteadiness of bhakti, that is to say, at times you may really sincerely, not to say you are deceptive in that appeal, really sincerely, and then time passes and residual tendencies come again. That's unsteady bhakti, standard. So now what to do? It doesn't mean that it's deceptive. It doesn't mean you stop asking. It means you continue cleansing and go further with the pleasing Krishna mood and go further with the calling for mercy mood. So that's the effort and mercy part. And keep going. Just keep going. There's one thing that I want to share, and I could make a teasing issue of this, but I don't think I'll do that. When I was in Boston, maybe Radha's attending this class. When I was in Boston, as soon as class was over, Radha's hand would be up. And she got the microphone, and the first thing she said was, so I started teasing her. She would say it, and I would say, and she'd laugh and giggle, and then she'd say, again, and say, So by the end of that visit, she stopped. And she didn't it was fun. We had a nice, affectionate exchange about correcting that tendency. And the specific thing I shared with her is, you're a thoughtful person, young person, but as your life unfolds, you're going to be speaking because you're an outspoken person. It detracts from the message if the very first thing that you say is, It takes away some of the strength of what you have to say. So I've been noticing, similarly, almost every person, when they get the microphone, the first sound vibration that comes is and then there's multiple more that come along, and as they're going along. It's not a big deal. But if you had, your questions transcribed, you go, what? And it's kind of pervasive. Very rare that speaking doesn't start with an. Maybe when you're reading the questions, you don't say first. But when you ask your questions, is at the beginning of the question. So I won't tease you, but I may giggle. And then you'll know why. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare,